Hey everyone, welcome to the first Dads Under Pressure podcast. Now, bear with me, I'm learning the ropes, so pardon all the fillers and all the stutters. This is all very new to me, and as with everyone else here, I imagine I'm not the best at speaking about my feelings and what needs to happen, but we're all learning together, and that's the point of this community, and the point of my ramblings. A phrase I think a lot of fathers know very well is the idea of holding it together. People say it's it's like a good thing, right? And in many ways it is. It usually means you're still functioning, still showing up, still working, still providing, still doing what needs to be done. But I think what gets talked about a lot less is what holding it together actually feels like from the inside. Because for a lot of fathers, it does not feel calm. It doesn't feel easy. I don't think it even always feels strong. Sometimes it just feels like carrying a lot quietly because too many people need you to stop, right? And that is what I want to talk about in this first episode. Not fatherhood in the generic sense, not advice, not slogans, just the actual internal reality of what it feels like when you're trying to stay steady while life keeps asking more from you. Now, from the outside, holding it together usually looks pretty ordinary. Father gets up, goes to work, sorts things out, makes calls, drives where it needs to be, pays what needs paying, handles the next thing, and keeps moving. And because he's still doing all of that, people assume he is coping. And that's one of the strange things about fatherhood pressure, I feel. A lot of it becomes invisible precisely because you are functioning. People see the output, they see the work, they see the reliability, they see you turning up. But what they, don't always see is the internal cost of doing all of that while carrying pressure in multiple directions at once. And I think a lot of fathers get very used to that gap. The gap between, how things look from the outside and how they actually feel on the inside. That gap can be very wide. Because a man can be functioning and still be mentally saturated, he can be dependable and still feel stretched thin. He can be calm in his behavior and still be carrying a lot of noise internally. And once you live that long enough, people start reading your function as your condition. They think because you are handling things, you must be okay. That's not always true. Inside, I think holding it together often feels less like strength and more like constant management. You're managing your thoughts, managing your reactions, managing your tiredness, managing your money worries, managing your family responsibilities, managing how much of what you feel you are even going to show. And that, quite frankly, that gets tiring in a way that sleep does not fully fix. Because it's not just physical tiredness. It's the tiredness of always needing to think ahead, always needing to stay steady, always needing to keep something in the air. I think a lot of fathers live with split attention as well. When you're at work, part of your head is at home. When you're at home, part of your head is on work, money, or whatever's coming next. And, even when you're physically somewhere, mentally you're often divided. There's nothing wrong with that, but that is exhausting. And I think is one of the reasons a lot of fathers struggle to explain what is wrong. Because nothing looks dramatically wrong. It just feels like there is never a true off switch. You keep moving, but the pressure stays with you. I don't think fathers always go quiet because they do not want connection. Sometimes they go quiet because they don't know how to explain what they're carrying without sounding either flat or overwhelmed, because what they feel is often mixed. It's it's not just stress, it's stress, guilt, duty, tiredness, fear, pressure, frustration, and love all sitting in the same place. That's not easy to put into clean language. I'm definitely struggling myself. And if you're already used to being the steady one, the practical one, the one people rely on, then speaking honestly can feel like stepping out of character. It can feel like you are dropping the role. So a lot of fathers simplify what they say. They say, and this may sound familiar, they say they are tired. They say work is busy. They say things are a lot right now. And sometimes that is as far as it goes. Not because there's nothing deeper there, but because silence starts to feel easier than trying to explain the full version badly. And once that becomes a habit, it can take years before a man even realizes how much of himself he has stopped translating. One thing I think happens to a lot of fathers is that pressure becomes normal, especially if responsibility came early or if life has been heavy for a long time. You stop seeing pressure as something unusual and, start seeing pressure as something just as how life is. You learn to adapt, you carry it, you handle it, you move with it, you push through it. And because you can do that, it becomes very easy to miss what the pressure is doing to you over time. You might become more practical, but also less emotionally available, right? You might become more dependable, but also harder to reach. You might become more efficient, but also more disconnected from your own needs. These things do tend to go hand in hand. And the reason that matters is because men often mistake adaptation for health. They think, well, I'm handling it, so I must be all right. But handling something and being unaffected by it are not the same thing. A lot of fathers are functioning inside patterns that were built under pressure, and they have not stopped long enough to ask what those patterns have cost them. I think one of the costs of always holding it together is that eventually it starts to show somewhere. Sometimes it shows in the body. I know a lot of, myself, I'm quite guilty of that. You can get more run down, you lose energy, you get out of shape, you stop recovering properly because everything else keeps feeling more urgent than you. Sometimes it even shows emotionally. You become shorter, more distant, become less patient, more numb to everything around you. Or you find that the only emotional mode that feels safe is practicality. You know, carry on and keep, stay calm and carry on practical, so to speak. Sometimes it shows in identity. You stop really knowing what you need outside of what everyone else needs from you. And I think this is where a lot of fathers get stuck because you know, they do not feel like they're allowed to fall apart, but they also don't know how to carry things in a healthier way. So they keep doing the same thing that got them this far, which is, usually some version of keep going, say less, deal with yourself later. And unfortunately, later has a way of becoming years. One of the reasons I wanted to start this channel and this podcast is because I don't think fathers need more empty slogans. I don't think most men are asking for pity either. I think what a lot of fathers need is better language. I know a lot of my friends and myself would be a lot happier if we knew and accepted how to express ourselves in a way we didn't feel we were a burden on others. You know, if we knew that there was a better language out there, language for the pressure, language for the silence. Language for the guilt, um, language for the mental load, language for the parts of fatherhood that are heavy but hard to explain. Because once something is, named properly, it becomes easier to understand. It becomes easier to define, becomes easier to explain. And once it's easier to understand, define, and explain, it often becomes easier to carry differently. This space is not about pretending life is hopeless. It's not about victimhood. It's not about polished family performance either. Um, God knows I'm far from perfect, but it's about saying the quiet part out loud. It's about honest conversations for fathers carrying a lot, and I think more men need that than people realize or or fathers will ever admit. So when I think about what holding it together really feels like, I don't think of some heroic version of masculinity. I think a lot of fathers quietly carrying pressure because life keeps moving and other people keep needing them. I think a lot of men who look fine and feel overloaded. Men who are doing their best but don't always have the words. Men who are functioning but not untouched. Men who are dependable but tired in deeper ways than people realize. And I think more honest conversations around that would help a lot of fathers feel less alone. If this resonates with you, I'd really like to know what part of holding it together feels hardest to explain to other people. That's where I want this podcast to begin. Thank you.